The Terran Union's patrol ship Janus prowled through the depths of space, always vigilant, always patrolling the border systems for pirates and raiders. She was a Nova-class frigate, 120 meters long and lightly armed by human standards. A pair of heavy railguns, 2 tubes for the Shark-class torpedoes, and 4 missile batteries to complement its point defense grid. She carried a crew of 15 but could double that if needed. Her captain, Jake Ridley, was in the crew lounge with his feet kicked up in a recliner, doing what he jokingly called Luge Training. At least he's not snoring, Lieutenant Tim Barnes thought to himself. Captain. Barnes gently shook him, but got no response, so he said it louder and shook him harder. No response. Well, shit. I guess I have to do it the other way. The thought made him grin. He stealthily took the pistol out of the captain's holster and replaced it with a banana. Another crew member was walking down the passageway at just the right time. Hey, Mike, come give me a hand, Barnes whispered to the crewman. Mike entered the room with a questioning look, but the moment he understood what Barnes wanted, he grinned from ear to ear. They each took an end of the chair, lifted it slightly, and then dumped the captain on the floor. Both men screamed, "Pirates, we're under attack!" and then doubled over with laughter at the sight of the captain trying to get up and draw his pistol. "What the fuck?" the captain shouted before noticing the 2 crewmen laughing at him and that he had a banana pointed at them. He threw the banana on the floor. "Very funny, you bastards," he scoffed. That made Barnes and Mike laugh even harder. The captain continued to make empty threats for a while as he tried to pull himself together. "Okay, so besides being a pair of assholes, did you wake me for a reason?" the captain asked. The lieutenant answered him. "Message from Sector Command." "You gonna tell me or keep grinning like an idiot?" Captain Ridley demanded. "They asked us to check a report of a derelict ship called in by a small courier ship passing through the Argo system." The lieutenant replied. "All right, set course for the Argo system. Did the courier provide any other information?" "She just said it was a short-range cargo hauler, drifting between Argo 8 and Argo 9. Probably ore from the mining station on Argo 7 to the Vitra system." 3 hours later, the Janus dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Argo system. Captain Ridley walked over to the sensor station. "What do we have, Kara?" After double-checking her instruments, she replied. "I found the ship, but I'm not getting any signs of life from her." She continued. "As a matter of fact, I'm not getting any kind of signals from anywhere in the system." Captain Ridley glanced at the comm station. "What do you hear, Ismail?" Ismail turned in his seat and faced the captain. "Not a damn thing. No reply to my hail from the ship. Even its transponder is off." "What about the mining station?" "Not a peep, but that could just be interference from asteroid belt," Ismail said. "Okay, move us into EVA range of the ship, but keep an eye on the sensors in case it's a trap," the captain ordered. "Aye, sir," answered the helmsman. Turning to look at Barnes, "I'm going to take a look. Have Mike and Jane meet me in the airlock." "Aye, Captain," the lieutenant replied. 15 minutes later, Captain Ridley and his 2 security officers were at the derelict's airlock. "Seal's still good on the outer hatch and enough power to operate the lock. Give me a moment to open it." Jane spoke into the mic. While they waited, Mike and the captain examined the ship's hull. "She's in better shape than she looks, Cap," Mike said. "The damage is all superficial, maybe just small pieces of rock or other debris hitting it but not penetrating." Captain Ridley replied, "Same on my side. We'll check the other side after we enter the ship." "Got it," Jane announced as the outer door of the airlock opened. The 3 entered the airlock and waited with rifles ready as it went through the process of pressurizing the chamber before opening the inner hatch. Captain Ridley exited and faced left, Mike facing right, lights shining down the pitch-black halls. Jane followed, checking her instruments for the environmental conditions. "Everything looks good, Cap. 21% O2, 78% nitrogen, and no toxins in the air. All within normal parameters for a human-crewed vessel," Jane remarked. "All right, let's head for the bridge and check the status of the rest of the ship before we bring the others over," the captain commented as he led the way down the hall, with Jane in the middle and Mike cautiously bringing up the rear. The hatch to the bridge was sealed shut, and Jane had to hack the locking mechanism before it opened. There was no rush of air as the door opened. The bridge was still intact and pressurized. but it was empty with only a pair of lights showing one console still had power. Jane walked over to the console while the two men swept the bridge. Console's functional but on backup power. All sections are within normal parameters. She's structurally sound. I'll need to go to engineering to get the main power back online, Jane said without looking up from the readings. All right, let's get the Janus docked and the others aboard before splitting up, the captain ordered. It took about 10 minutes to get the ships in position and for Jane to restore the main power. Barnes, have the bridge crew and a guard remain on the ship. I want the rest of the crew over here to do a full sweep of the ship. The captain called over his suit comms. Aye, sir. Armed? The lieutenant replied. Yeah, to be on the safe side. The captain continued. Jane and Mike are in engineering now. Send Max and Jolly to the bridge. I want two-person teams to begin searching the ship. Your call on assignments, but no one goes alone. You got it, Cap, the lieutenant replied. Despite the flippant reply, they'd worked together long enough for the captain to hear the unease in the lieutenant's voice. Max and Jolly arrived a few minutes later. The three of them began going through the ship's computer and other system data. Captain Ridley went through the official and private logs of the captain. They found the ship's name, Amazon, and it had a crew of 8, under Captain Benjamin Briggs. His wife and young daughter were also listed as passengers. It took about an hour to sweep the ship from stem to stern. Everything was in order. The life pods were still aboard and functional. The cargo was intact and their personal belongings were in their quarters. They did find a prosthetic hand in one of the crew quarters, but it wasn't unusual for miners to replace the hand with other attachments for certain jobs. Lieutenant Barnes stood next to the captain. I don't get it. Everything is intact and functioning to the level of a cargo ship this old. Barnes scratched his chin before continuing. But there isn't a damn sign of the crew having abandoned ship anywhere. The captain let out a sigh. Well, she's fit to fly, so how about you take Jane, Mike, Jolly, and Tracy, and take this ship back to the mining station? We'll poke around this area of space for a bit longer and meet up later. Aye, sir. Lieutenant Barnes looked around the bridge before speaking again. I'll be glad to get her back to the station. She just doesn't feel right somehow. Captain Ridley looked over at the lieutenant. I know what you mean. I can't place it, but there is something wrong with this ship. The trip to the mining station took about an hour on the battered old ship. It was built on one of the larger asteroids in the system. The Janus had been searching the area for any clues to what happened on the Amazon. Lieutenant Barnes's voice crackled over the comm system. Captain, you need to come to the station ASAP. Keying the mic, Captain Ridley asked, What's going on? Lieutenant Barnes replied, You'll need to see it for yourself. Being a faster ship, the Janus only took 15 minutes to arrive at the station. They sat down next to the Amazon on the tarmac. The captain suited up again and exited the ship. Lieutenant Barnes and the 4 members of the crew were waiting for him. Just looking at his crew told him something was very wrong here. Mike was constantly scanning the horizon, his rifle at the ready. The rest showed various forms of nervousness. All right, I'm here, the captain said. What was so urgent? The station appears to be empty too, the lieutenant replied, but we need more help to check it all. Empty like they've closed it down? No, sir, empty like the ship. Some of the mining equipment was still active, the lieutenant reported. Captain Ridley thought for a moment. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I want 2 people to remain aboard the Janus. Everyone else armed and split into pairs again. The captain continued. I want every building searched, and when we are done, we'll check the mine. The captain took a look around. I'll take Max and Jolly to the command center and poke around in their systems. When we are done with the station, then we'll expand the search and use the Janus and Amazon to survey the rest of this rock. An hour and a half later, every building had been searched. There were signs that people had been here recently, and there were almost 24 environmental suits in their racks by the airlock. The station only had 30 people on it. There wouldn't be that many spare suits available. The 4 shuttles were still docked and showed signs of use. What the fuck is going on here? The captain thought to himself. A cargo ship and now a mining station completely empty. Pirates? No sign of combat. All their weapons were racked and hadn't been fired in weeks. All the shuttles are still here, and no distress call was sent out. The captain's comms beeped, and Lieutenant Barnes's voice came through. We've completed our sweep of the mines and the flyovers. Not a sign of them or where they went. Well, shit, the captain thought. All right, let's get everyone back to the Janus. I'm getting a bad feeling about this. Aye, sir, the lieutenant replied, relief evident in his voice. What about the Amazon? We'll leave her here for now. I think we better keep the crew together, was the captain's reply. As the Janus lifted off from the station, Captain Ridley called Sector Command on their findings so far. He'd waved the crew back while he gave his report so the bridge crew could only hear his side of the conversation. It's where? The surprise evident in his voice. And they requested our assistance? Aye, sir. Can you double-check they know we are coming? I don't want them to shoot my ass off. We'll get it done. ETA is about 6 hours. The captain ended the call and turned to his expectant crew. He looked at the navigator. Set course for Devolonian 2. The crew filled the air with different questions and concerns about crossing into Zrel space. The captain held up his hands to quiet them down. Yeah, I know. We all know how strict they are about alien vessels straying from the approved space lanes, but this is at their request. The captain continued. They lost contact with a colony on Devolonian 2 about 12 hours ago. The colony missed some sort of pre-planned communication with their bosses, and all attempts to raise the colony have failed. And they called us. That's out of character for them, the lieutenant said. From what the commander said, the Zrel contacted us to see if we had gotten any kind of signal from them. Their nearest ship is about 3 days away. Sector Command mentioned how close we were and asked if they wanted us to check on them. The Zrel surprisingly agreed to this. The Janus arrived at the edge of the Devolonian system 6 hours later. Any communications or signals, Kara? The captain inquired. Nothing, sir, just like before, Kara replied. Anything, Ismael? Turning to the comm station. Not a damn thing, sir. No response to my hail, no outgoing communications, Ismael answered. Well, shit. The captain muttered to himself. All right, Helm. Take us to Devolonian 2 and assume standard orbit. Aye, aye, sir, Max answered. They're nervous. The captain thought to himself, they aren't usually this formal unless we are in combat. Even Lieutenant Barnes has started to act that way. Much like the subs during some internal conflicts 400 years ago, the anti-pirate patrol ships, like the Janus, were much more informal about rank than the larger ships of the Navy. Lieutenant Barnes approached the captain and asked in a low voice, Should we order everyone to combat stations just in case? The captain thought it over. Let's hold off, the crew is antsy as is. He continued, but I want you to personally make sure all the systems are good to go. He noticed Lieutenant Barnes relax a little. Aye, aye, sir. Captain, we've arrived at Devolonian 2, or I think we have, Max said. You're not sure? The captain answered. Did you get us lost, like that time in the Shanran system? He hoped the joke would relax tensions, but it didn't. Max replied, Nav say we are at Devolonian 2, but it doesn't look like a colony world. Put it up on the main screen. The captain ordered. Astonished gasps and muttered oaths came from the bridge crew. What the fuck? The captain exclaimed. The land masses on the planet were shades of brown, black, and gray. Even the water seemed dull and dirty. Devolonian 2 looked more like a world needing to be terraformed, and not a colony that had been there for over 90 Earth years. The captain turned to Lieutenant Barnes. Combat stations, if you please. Lieutenant Barnes pushed the button and gave the command to man their stations. Being such a small ship, it was only a matter of moments before the crew reported being ready. Ship is combat ready, sir, the lieutenant called out to the captain. Thank you, Mr. Barnes, the captain replied, addressing his XO in the centuries-old tradition. Kara, Ismael, anything? The captain asked, without taking his eyes off the view screen. Almost in unison, they answered with a negative. Ismael, contact the Zrel and let them know we've arrived at Devolonian 2 and ask what type of colony it is. Maybe we got the wrong navigation info from them. Take us down to the largest settlement, he ordered. The Janus set down on the outskirts of the settlement. Their landing stirred up clouds of dust, but no reaction from the settlement. The captain looked at Lieutenant Barnes. Mr. Barnes, Max, Kara, and Jane will remain aboard. I want full combat load. The captain looked at Kara and Max. "Keep the sensor sweeps going and your heads up. We might have to leave in a hurry." They both nodded in response. "Aye, sir." He then called down to engineering. He gave her the same orders and then he hurried down to the airlock. As the crew approached the settlement, Jolly scanned the area. The landing party moved in combat formation, weapons primed and their eyes scanning their surroundings. "Atmosphere within Zarel normal and fine for us. No radiation, unusual gases or the like," Jolly reported. Before he could respond, Ismail called him over comms. "Captain, I received a reply from the Zarel. They confirmed our coordinates and said it's an agricultural colony. Population 15 million if I translated the number correctly." "Not anymore, it isn't," popped into the captain's head before he replied to Ismail. "I copy, thank you. I want 3 teams of 4. The lieutenant and Mike will each lead one and I'll take the third." The captain ordered, "No one goes anywhere alone and I want check-ins every 10 minutes. "Aye, sir," the crew replied. Lieutenant Barnes spoke up. "With the environmental readings showing normal, do you want to keep the armor sealed or open it up?" Captain Ridley thought for a moment and then opened the visor of his helmet. He took a deep breath before exhaling. "Pop 'em, but be ready to seal up fast." "Aye, sir." He wasn't sure who, but one of the crew commented, "The air tastes stale. Dead." He found himself agreeing with that. "Mike, take your group around the perimeter and scout no more than 50 meters out, unless I say so." "Aye, sir." Mike saluted before trotting off with his group. "Mr. Barnes, take your group up that street to the right. I want every building, every room swept. I'll take this street." "Aye, sir," Lieutenant Barnes replied. The captain followed up with, "And Tim, watch your ass." Lieutenant Barnes smiled and replied, "You too, Jack." They worked their way down the street, checking every building and alley. They'd just finished checking their 5th building when the captain realized something. Keying his comms, Mike, Tim, returned to the ship, on the double. Both men acknowledged the order. The captain turned back towards the ship and started back. "Something wrong, Captain? Besides this place?" one of the crew asked. "Yeah, but we'll discuss it aboard ship. I want everyone together for this," he answered before stooping down to put some dirt in a container. It took about 15 minutes before everyone arrived at the ship and another 10 to perform decontamination procedures. The captain pulled Jolly aside and whispered instructions to him before handing over the container of dirt. Jolly then hurried down the hall. The captain gathered everyone else in the mess before beginning to talk. "I have one question for everyone," pausing to drink some water. "Has anyone seen any form of organic matter on the ship, the station, or here?" As people replied no to the question, the captain continued, "I didn't think much about it in the ship or station since much of our gear is metal or some kind of manufacture materials. But after checking several buildings, I noticed a lack of any organic material. No wood, no food, no animals or people." He took another drink before continuing. "I found several personal photos that were taken in or near the settlement by some of the background buildings, and they showed an abundance of plant life, people, animals, and wooden objects." Jolly re-entered the room and at the captain's glance shook his head in the negative. "Nothing at all?" the captain asked. Jolly shook his head again. "Fuck. Well, that confirms it. Time to get the fuck out of here," he thought to himself before speaking again. "I had Jolly check a sample of the soil and it's dead. No bacteria or any other organic material." The crew started talking over each other with questions and curses. "Max, get us off this rock. We'll do some sweeps from orbit, but we are not setting down again unless we find some people," the captain ordered. While the ship investigated the rest of the planet, Captain Ridley called and reported their findings to Sector Command and the Zarel. Neither side seemed to completely believe him and just thought he was mistaken. He listened to them argue the facts before Ismail walked up and whispered in his ear. Addressing the Zarel commander, "Your Excellency, excuse me for interrupting, but we just got a fragment of a distress call from the next system." The Zarel asked, "From where?" "The Sagra system, but the signal didn't last long enough to get a better fix than that," the captain replied. The Zarel commander practically jumped to his feet, exclaiming, "Sagra! We have 3 colony worlds there." The captain looked to his crew. He saw in their faces they'd caught the Zarel commander's outburst. He didn't even have to speak the question out loud. The bridge crew all nodded their acceptance. He noticed Lieutenant Barnes had the button down for the intra-ship comms. He listened to his headset and then gave the thumbs up. "With your permission, Your Excellency, we'll investigate the source of the transmission and report back." The Z'rell commander had a look of both surprise and then relief at the captain's word. "Permission granted, and thank you, Captain," the Z'rell commander responded. Sector Command just nodded in agreement before adding, "Good luck, Captain." As he ended the call, he turned and looked at his crew. "Last chance to back out. There is no shame if you do. But I have to know what it is." No one wanted to quit. "All right, Max, set course," the captain ordered. "Aye, sir," Max replied. The Janus arrived at the Sagra system and began scanning. "Sir, I have contacts," Kara exclaimed. Ismail added, "I have multiple distress signals, but only from a colony on the 8th moon of Sagra 6. "What about the other 2 colonies?" the captain inquired. Kara replied, "Scanners indicate that Sagra 3 is dead, just like Devalonian 2. Kara paused for a second. "Sagra's 4th moon is returning no signals from my equipment." "Visuals?" the captain asked. "We have visuals, but it makes no sense," she replied. "Bring it up on the main view screen," he ordered. "What the fuck?" Max called out. "What the hell is that?" Lieutenant Barnes exclaimed. The moon looked like it was covered in a writhing black mass. "Ismail, get me the Z'rell commander," the captain said, trying to keep his voice calm. After a few moments, Ismail replied, "Long-range communications are down." "Okay, let's jump out of the system and try again," the captain ordered. "Anytime now, Max." "I'm trying, sir, but FTL seems to be down," Max replied. "Shit," the captain called down to engineering. "Jane, what's the problem down there?" He could hear the frustration in her voice. "Hell if I know, sir," she continued. "The FTL is functioning as normal, but we can't seem to form the nexus to enter FTL." "I understand. Keep working at it," the captain replied. "Ismail, try and contact the colony on Sagra 6's 8th moon." "Aye, sir," Ismail answered before he began trying to make contact. It took him a few moments before he could get through to someone in the local government. "I got the colony's governor online," Ismail said. "Put it on the main screen, if you please," the captain ordered. A panicked-looking Z'rell appeared on the monitor. Who are you?" it asked. "Captain Ridley of the Terran Union ship, the Janus." He continued. "Z'rell Command requested our assistance in investigating a matter in the Devalonian system. We caught a fragment of a distress call and volunteered to investigate." The Z'rell official looked relieved. "So a signal got out. We've been trying for days and no reply." The captain added, "Our long-range comms are down and we are having problems with our FTL. Do you know anything about that?" "Not really, Captain," the Z'rell official replied. "We lost comms with Sagra 3 one of our days ago, and now we're getting no response to Sagra 5. He continued, "We did get a partial message from a cargo ship that they couldn't jump to FTL, but then it cut off suddenly." "You won't be getting any more messages from them. Whatever destroyed Sagra 3 is now attacking Sagra 5's colony moon." The captain continued, "How many space-capable ships do you have?" The Z'rell official looked off-screen before replying. 7, but only 1 has FTL. "Shit. And how many colonists?" the captain asked, dreading the answer. "Just over 2 million adults and children," the official replied. "Captain," Kara interrupted. "Whatever it is, it's seen us." "Just a moment," the captain told the official as he muted the channel. "What do you mean noticed us?" he barked. Kara adjusted the magnification of the main screen. It looked like a tendril was emerging from that mass and pointed at them. "Fuck, how long before it gets here?" he asked. Kara replied, "Best guess is 45 minutes. Captain Ridley unmuted the channel with the Z'rell official. "Our scanners indicate a piece of whatever is attacking the colony on Sagra 5 is now heading this way." He'd never seen a Z'rell turn pale before, but he did now. "How soon?" 45 of our minutes. I don't know how that translates to your time," the captain replied. The Z'rell tapped something just off-screen. 9 santels in hours. "Get as many of your people onto those ships and run," the captain ordered. The Z'rell official exclaimed, "We won't get very far if it's that fast." "We'll try and buy you some time," the captain added. and keep trying to contact someone, anyone, to relay a message to your people." "I will, Captain, and thank you." The screen went dark as the Zrel signed off. "Mr. Barnes, combat stations, warm up everything we got," ordered the captain. "Aye, sir," he replied. "Ismail Kara, prepare the message buoys, both of them." He added, "Set the stationary one to wait 24 hours before activating the transponder. With any luck, they'll be gone. Launch the other one and set it to jump to FTL as soon as it can. Max, let's do it." A combined Zrel and Terran task force entered the Sagra system 3 days later. A single Zrel transport of 300 survivors was located over 250,000 kilometers out of the system. The Zrel official had given the captains of each ship a copy of the communication with the Janus. The other 6 ships were found floating near the edge of the Sagra system. Not a single sign of the passengers or crew was found. Scouts from the task force went on to find all 3 colonies dead, and the few other moons with some form of life were stripped bare as well. The Janus was found dead in space, battered but intact. She was floating near Sagra 5's 18th moon. Examination found no sign of the crew, but her missile racks were empty, her torpedoes were gone, and one of her railguns had overheated and burned out the magnetic firing system. Both were low on ammo. Blast marks were found inside the ship in several areas. The pistols and rifles were scattered around the ship, depleted of ammo. The ship's black box, as tradition called them, was retrieved as well as the stationary sensor buoy. The contents were still being decrypted, but the buoy's internal clock indicated it received telemetry from the Janus for 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 32 seconds. The data from the black box was fragmented and needed to be reconstructed, but it was obvious the crew never gave up and fought to the very end. As the captain of the Ares remarked after she was towed into a hangar, "She put up one hell of a fight. No sign of the unknown enemy was ever found in the galaxy. Maybe it fled to another galaxy, or maybe the Janus and her valiant crew destroyed it."